Town. The most famous goal of Chris Billy's life. Is this the moment for Lee Fowler? It is. Take your place in Division 2, Huddersfield Town.
Thank you.
Ruby and Steve Simonson's boots now. He's missed. Steve Simonson clears the frame of the goal and collapses in a heap of tears. Huddersfield Town are promoted.
Skipper Schindler has a chance to write his name in Huddersfield Town legend. And he takes that chance!
Hello and welcome to episode 197 of the Andy Takes That Chance podcast. Over the last few weeks, the Nagle has landed. Town have made 2 signings, but fan pressure on Darren Moore keeps cranking up as Town have failed to win in their last 4 games. Joining me, Matt Shaw, today on the podcast is the silk to my feathers. It's Ian Kilroy. How are we doing, Killer?
I'm all right. I'm looking forward to these next few games coming up. Some more happy times, I'm sure, are on the way after some wonderful football this last week.
Yes, and speaking of wonderful, this podcast, as always, is sponsored by Magic Rock Brewing. Use our code of AHTTC10 for 10% off all of your online orders at www.magicrockbrewing.com. And also head down there on match day and you may see a big galoot like Brady Frost hanging around there and a couple of the other chaps. Okay, Killer, quiz question for you. Name me another club that would sign a first-team striker for the first time in years, make a big deal out of it, and then he gets injured in his first week's training session and miss a really key relegation game. It just feels like we're cursed, doesn't it, in terms of strikers this season? Bojan Radulovic signed on the dotted line, played against Man City, looked okay in the little cameo, didn't he? He looked quite promising. And then his first week training gets injured and he's out of what is quite a key game against Plymouth. And it's just, it leaves you, I'm sure, I mean, Darren Moore's got no hair at the minute, but I think everyone else is tearing theirs out, aren't they, at the moment?
Yeah, I'm not going to have much left, I don't think, by the time February comes around, Matt. I think when you have a good season, good things tend to happen, don't they? Like there's fewer injuries and stuff. And then when you have a bad season, everything just turns against you and goes wrong at the worst possible time. I thought he was quite nice. I thought he was quite a decent little player. And I won't say a little, he's a tall guy, but against Man City, he looked okay, didn't he, in the second half? But then he's not played properly, I don't think. I think season finishes, at the end of December, beginning of December. So he's had a few weeks off where he was.
October. And then he's played
European.
Yeah, and then he's played European games, hasn't he, in December? So he's played.
Well, we're told all the time, aren't we? We're told all the time as fans that it takes quite a while to get a player ready to play, even if they're already fit and they're ready. They've got to learn the new system. Not only has he got to learn our system, which I'm not entirely sure what it is just yet, not the new system we're going for, but he's got to get up to match fitness. And the Finnish league, with all due respect, isn't the Championship. The Championship is known as being one of the toughest in the professional game, and we expect him to come in and start because we have so few other options. And the training itself just seems to be too much for him. But by the sound of it, Darren Moore spoke after the game, didn't he? He was just a knock. He's not expected to be out for a long time. But like you said, Matt, to go into a big game, one of the big 4 games that we've got, obviously that one's gone now, the Plymouth game, but we've got Blackburn, Sheffield Wednesday, and QPR. Is that the run we have?
Yeah, Blackburn, QPR, Sheffield Wednesday. Yeah.
That's the one. It is crucial to our season, and because the fixtures after that are much more difficult. So to lose your new number 9, your statement number 9, your Kevin Nagle's main signing, or I'm guessing what he expected to be the main signing of this January transfer window, for him to be gone before his first league game is about as Huddersfield Town as you can get, or especially as Huddersfield Town as you can get for this season so far.
And last season as well. The deadline to recall Jordan Rhodes has passed as well. So Jordan Rhodes will be staying at Blackpool till the end of the season. And for me, it always made sense to recall Jordan Rhodes. We've gone into this Plymouth game without a single striker in the 20-man squad. Again, it's painful. It was possible to recall Rhodes and then send him back to Blackpool at the end of the month. And I always thought that was the smart move, bring him back, even if it's just for a couple of games, and then roll him back out again to Blackpool once you've hit your or once you've signed the targets that you've got. And I was a little bit not surprised. I wasn't really surprised. No one's going to sit here and pretend that Jordan Rhodes is the answer to all of our problems. You know, we saw Jordan over the last 12, 18 months, but he is on fire at the minute at Blackpool. Hasn't scored in his last 4, but he's got 15 goals this season, and I just thought it made perfect sense just to bring it back. And I get it; it takes 2 to tango, doesn't it? Jordan's got to want to come back as well. He's probably enjoying himself at Blackpool, playing week in, week out. But with the current situation, it just felt like the best course of action was just to, bring you back, and then once we've got everyone settled in, you can go back to Blackpool and finish the season. But it's just the way it's going, isn't it, Killer? It's for me, it seemed the sensible thing to do, but it's just not happened, unfortunately.
There's 2 aspects to it, though, isn't there? You can look at it from Jordan's perspective, and I don't think he was treated necessarily the best by the club over the last couple of years. Opportunities I thought he kind of deserved when it came to minutes on the field, he didn't really get. He got a little bit more under Warnock, but then over the summer, the plans seem to have changed for the club. He's gone to Blackpool. I think he's in a. Have we got an option on him for next season, Matt, or is he out of contract this?
No, I think he's out of contract in the summer. Yeah, I think that's it.
So he's playing for a new deal. He don't look like he's going to retire anytime soon with the amount of goals he's bagging. So he's kind of earning himself a new contract, and he's looked really good for Blackpool. If you look at the amount of minutes he's played, he's playing most 90 minutes, and you can look at the Blackpool forums. I've been reading up a little bit, knowing that we could have recalled him just to see how he's going, because there's different ways to score goals, isn't there? You can like inflate your figures by penalties and kind of set pieces and stuff like that. But Rhodes sounds like he's back to his best. And if you're watching his highlights, his snap shooting, and he looks like the Rhodes we had in the Championship and many moons ago. But of course, he's not at that level anymore. He is older, but he's definitely fitter than he's been with us for the last couple of years because he's been given more time. And now I was having a bit of an argument about this online with somebody the other day, but if you look at Jordan Rhodes' minutes per goal, even over the last 4 or 5 seasons, he'd have averaged 15, 16 goals a season if he'd been given the appropriate game time. And I understand you have to earn that, and there's reasons why he didn't. But he can always score goals. We knew we were thin when it came to strikers for the month of January, like you said, Matt. And I didn't understand that we could have done that we could have recalled him and then sent him back out to Blackpool on loan. I understood we had a short time.
I think it depends how many loans Blackpool have had. I think it might count as another loan again for Blackpool, but it's doable. It is doable.
Well, I think that'd have been a genius option because we were always going to be one injury away from having no strikers, and that's exactly where we found ourselves on Saturday against Plymouth. And it seems it's easy to sit here now and say, "Oh, look, we definitely should have done it because we ended up with no strikers." It's a bit remiss to not mention that. But for
even
me,
then, Radulevic's not going to be 100%, is he? So it still makes sense. And Kyle Hudlin's got an injury. Kean Harrett's injured. Kieran Phillips is injured. So every striker we've got is injured. I mean, Sorba's done okay up front. He's not a striker. I'll still sit here and argue that he's not a natural striker with anyone. He's a good player. I like Sorba Thomas a lot, but for me, you take away a lot of the effectiveness of what Sorba Thomas does by putting him through the middle. He was great against Middlesbrough and Blackburn. Don't get me wrong; he was really good, wasn't he? But again, against Leicester and Man City, and again against Plymouth, you could just kind of see that he's just not quite fully suited to that role. He's much more suited to coming in from the outside. And Koroma, I like as a player. I've always liked Josh Koroma as a player. I know he has dips, doesn't he? He's up and down a lot. Still got the conch here, by the way. It's still here on my desk. It's still the Koroma conch. It almost became the Headley horn when we thought we were losing Josh Koroma, but we still got it. And he did score, which was great. You know, he's a really nice finish, and we'll come to that shortly. But with the options we got, I think Koroma's probably the better, isn't it, of him and Sorba Thomas. And you just there's a way that you can try and get them to service each other, and I just don't think that was quite happening. But let's move on to the game. We'll draw a line under Jordan Rhodes. I don't think anyone would sit here and say that Jordan Rhodes is the answer to all of our prayers, but for me, he was a better option to have up front than Sorba Thomas or Josh Koroma. Maybe with one of them is fine. It's just Josh Koroma and Sorba Thomas are more outside of the box kind of players. And when you're playing 2 up front, you need one who at least likes to be in the penalty box, and we don't really have that at the minute. But we can draw a line under that now because we know that Jordan's not coming back, and we can wish him all the best for Blackpool. So we don't need to talk about that in the podcast again for anyone who gets irritated by the Jordan Rhodes talk, and I'm sure some people do. But let's move on to the game. For me, I said to a couple of friends beforehand, I felt the worst possible result was a draw. I thought this was a not a must win, but this was a game where I thought we really needed to win because it did two things. It would have propelled us up. 3 points obviously would have helped propel us up, but it would have also dragged Plymouth back in at a time when Plymouth are really struggling. They've just lost two midfielders, lost Finn Azaz, who's a really good midfielder who's gone to Middlesbrough. I think Aston Villa have recalled him and Middlesbrough bought him. Luke Cundle has been recalled by, I think it's Wolves, and then he's gone back out to Stoke. They've lost the manager in Schumacher. There's rumours that Brentford are looking at Morgan Whittaker and a couple of other things. Now, I just felt like Plymouth were in a spot that, it's the manager's first game as well. Foster, the manager's come in. It's his very first game. I just felt Plymouth were in a spot where they were ready to be taken, if I'm honest. I felt they were a little bit fragile. And the start of the game, I thought it was dull, but I felt like we got on top, and then we made a bit of a mistake, didn't we? I mean, we'll talk about Brodie Spencer as well first, because Brodie Spencer stepped in at left centre back, replacing the role which has been vacated by Yuta Nakayama, who'll be missing for I think another 4 weeks now because he's gone to the Asian. Why they've put Brodie Spencer at left centre back? They've not really wanted to upset two positions, have they, by moving Tom Lees across. Ramadi Edmonds-Green could have played, I guess. Hasn't really excelled, shall we say. But I understand why they wanted to play Spencer, because Kasumu's fit, so they can bring Kasumu back into the right wing-back role where he's done pretty well. And I think it's a straight shootout then between the guy they've brought back from Motherwell in Spencer and Ramadi Edmonds-Green. And I get why they've done it. They've not wanted to move Lees because, it upsets two positions. But I felt it was a big task to mark Morgan Whittaker as well, to play in a position which is slightly unfamiliar for him. And I think Brodie does kind of lose him a little bit for the first goal, doesn't he? But it's not really all on Brodie Spencer, that the ball's on the right-hand side, and I feel the midfield gets drawn across too much. Hoggy and Matos get drawn across, and it leaves the space out wide. And then Kasumu doesn't really go with Bali Mumba either. And he puts the ball across, and Whittaker just peels off. And he's a very smart player. He's a very good player, is Morgan Whittaker. And he scores quite an easy goal, really, for Plymouth. And it was just a really disappointing start to the game after Plymouth had really offered very little up until that sort of point. And it was the first attack that they really had. And to be honest with you, they didn't really offer a massive amount after that. But I've got to say, Brodie Spencer, I felt like he handled himself very, very well after that. There was a couple of occasions where I think he lost Whittaker once or twice, but the pass wasn't quite good enough to find Whittaker. But I felt the sort of last 60 minutes of the game, he coped really, really well with him. And I felt like it was a really mature performance from a 19-year-old playing in a position which isn't overly familiar. I know he's played left wing back, left back, and right wing back, right back. And he has played right centre back for the academy as well, but for the first team, it's a completely different kettle of fish. And I thought he really equipped himself really well, Killer. And that second half in particular, I thought he did great. And he read situations really well. He's got pace, which allowed him to intercept a couple of things. Now, I felt he was quite deserving of the Man of the Match award. I don't know how you feel about that.
I agree. I agree entirely. He doesn't look like he plays like a 19-year-old, does he? He looks like he's much more mature than that. But that said, it was perfect for me for 89 minutes. But as you just went through there, Matt, you've got Kasumu playing as a right wing back, and you've got Spencer playing as a left centre back. Both are kind of out of position a little bit. And in Championship level football, when you are at the bottom of the division like we are, you have to be perfect for more or less the entire game, because if you do have any issues, other teams can manipulate it and score. Morgan Whittaker's playing in not a great Plymouth team, yet he still managed to score 15 goals this season. He's coming to this game, I think, he scored 4 in 4 or 5 in 5 before it. And I think the information's confused. I think a cup game's included. But regardless, he scored 6 goals in these last 6 games, and one of them may have been a cup game. And that moment, you could see the problem you have when you have such a thin squad and you have to play players out of position, because for the goal, Spencer's involved at the beginning. Like say, Matos and Hogg get dragged out to the right-hand side, and Kasumu there, he's got to make a decision on. And is it Mbembu? Who was it? What's the
Bali Mumba, isn't it?
Bali Mumba. he's Kasuma, because he's used to play as a central midfielder. He's kind of defending the middle of the goal and gives him extra space out wide, because as a central midfielder, that's what you do. You stop the block. You've got to block the shots. You've got to stop those passes to the inside. So what he doesn't do is he's closing down quick enough as a wide man. And as he crosses it in, Spencer Brodie's ball watching. He's been ball watching Kasuma, who's marking of trying to stop the cross coming in. And unfortunately, Whittaker, he does what he does best, and he's clinical and puts it away for quite a straightforward goal. It came from a direct mistake for me from both Spencer and Kasuma. But again, you've got to expect that when you're playing players out of position. Now, I thought Brodie Spencer was fantastic for the rest of the game. I think I thought he was good against Man City. I thought he had a very tough job against Jack Grealish, and he looked handy. But again, with young players, you're going to have those lapses of concentration, and more so when you're playing out of position. But then when for the rest of the game, you get back at it, he was very aware that he made that mistake. Ben Jackson told him pretty vociferously to his face straight after it had gone in. They was fuming that he ball watched and let him in. But he got back on his horse and he carried on, and it was a better, like you said, I agree. I thought he was definitely man of the match for me at the weekend. But it was just Plymouth, both teams, to say we're at the bottom of the division, really started playing kamikaze football from the off. Neither team are good ball-playing teams, possession-based teams. And from the start, both teams are trying to roll it out and play it around the back. And both teams were just getting into trouble doing it. And it was a very, very strange first 20, 25 minutes for me. I get it with Plymouth because they've got a new coach. He's not exactly sure what he's dealing with, and he's trying to find out. But we've got Darren Moore, who's been here for quite a while now, and he should know better than that. Once we changed and stepped up a little bit and tried to play the ball further up the field, it might have been sideways and backwards. It just looked a little bit more solid. We didn't look like we were playing into trouble like we did in that first 25, 30 minutes. But it's one of those goals you concede because you've got players out of position. And that's a problem we're going to have when you've got a squad as thin as we do.
I think another way to look at that is you go back to the very first game of the season as well, and Bali Mumba played on the left-hand side, and he came in, didn't he, and scored that goal where Roman Edmonds-Green was stood in the back of the stand, wasn't he? The fact that, and I suppose they might have been aware of that as well, him coming in onto his right-hand side, but I think maybe that might have affected the decision to kind of stay tucked in a little bit, because Bali Mumba's a very good footballer who can hurt you from those angles if he does come inside. And I think that might have played on his mind a little bit. But once he then goes wide, you've got to really snap in and get to him quick, haven't you? But, it's not really a massive error from Kasuma. It's just one of those things, isn't it, where, like you say, a player out of position, and maybe with a bit more experience, he would be, quicker into it. But, he's... No complaints whatsoever about
no, the cross is fantastic. It splits both Helican. Like the cross is good. So Whittaker doesn't have to do much to put that away. He had a lot to do and he still did it. But you're right, it was just a bit narrow. But like you say, the goal that he scored against us in the first game of the season is probably something they picked up on the scouting tapes and decided to show him out wide instead of letting him cut in. And it just didn't work out that time.
And then Town scored back, 38 minutes. Josh Karoma, we'd say possible foul by Matos in the build-up. Although I think the referee was really strange, actually. I felt like he gave Plymouth pretty much everything up until this point, and then after this point, he gave everything to us. It was a really bizarre refereeing performance. I think the Plymouth players sort of slightly overstretches trying to shield the ball, and Matos comes flying in. And from the sort of angle behind, I'm not sure if there's any contact made, but if there is or there isn't, when someone flies in like that, 99 times out of 100, it's usually given as a free kick, isn't it? And then it falls for Sorba Thomas, who tees up Josh Karoma, who scores with a very nice finish. It's a good finish by Karoma with his left foot. I think we spoke about this off record, didn't we, before? And I think you hit the nail on the head, really, when you said if that's against us, we're going mental out. We're saying it's a foul, and I think if you take your blue and white tinted glasses off, I think.
I can't believe it stood, to be honest. I thought it was about stonewall of free kick as you can possibly get. But then, if you slow it down, maybe he didn't make as much contact. But the Plymouth guy's in control of the ball. He's kind of just moved his body to get in the way of Matos, who was flying in. And it's just a standard free kick, I thought. Karoma had a lot to do with the finish. I thought it's a standard Karoma finish, though, and it was a little pull back and then cross back across the face. It was a good finish, and it was just nice to see Town just for those moments. Again, Plymouth tried to play out a little bit at the back, and we pushed higher. And now we didn't really press too much apart from Matos. You can tell our the game plan there in that end of the first half was just have enough men further forward to make it hard for them to pass out. But against Sunderland away was the best I've seen our midfield actually press. It was unbelievable the way we stopped the passing lanes. And now we weren't quite at that level against Plymouth, but when you've got Matos and he's going in so fast all the time, which will no doubt get him into a lot of trouble during the rest of this season. Because can you remember anybody throwing himself in like that, Matt, for us?
He's chaotic, isn't he? To say the least, he's Matos. Can I remember anyone throwing it? I don't know.
I know it's only been 2 games. I know it's early, but
I'd like to say Damien Johnson, but I don't think he ever threw himself in quite as manically as that, did he? He was a bit more calculated. Was Damien Johnson back in the Lee Clark days, wasn't he? But no, he's. There's a lot of action there. I love the tackle against Man City. I couldn't believe he got booked. To be fair, I'm right up at the back of the stand, and I think someone said he might have got booked for an elbow just before it. But the tackle that he put on against, was it Akanji, where he absolutely flew in? I thought that was a great tackle.
He could have been sent off for that alone, Matt. He did elbow somebody straight in the face and then went in and cleaned out a it was. But that's the thing is,
you love it though, don't you? You gotta love that.
Yeah, but no, that I actually love the signing of Matos. If we've brought him in to do that, fantastic, because when you are at the bottom of the division and when you can't dictate football by playing football, you have to find other ways to do it. And Matos he's definitely going to have an effect, isn't it? Because the way he throws himself in, nobody wants to play against that in midfield. Honestly, if you're lining up on a Saturday and you can see him, and you know every time you get the ball, he's going to come through the back here. You just know he's going to be there. You'll hear it. You'll feel it. You'll just do something you shouldn't, and then just get rid of it, or you're going to get tackled. And you can see that's what happened. That is exactly what happened at the weekend.
How do you think he did then? How did you? I found him quite difficult to judge because there was 5 fouls in the game, and there probably should have been more if we're truthful. But his passing accuracy was good. It was like just under 92%, which I didn't really realize watching live. So his passing accuracy was really good. I found him difficult to quantify because it was very chaotic, wasn't he? Sort of running around, charging like a bull in a china shop, wasn't he? Just crashing around the place. And at points, I thought he was brilliant, and then at other points, I thought it was a nightmare waiting to happen, but not in a bad way. But
he's playing like a guy on his debut, though, Matt. When we used to have all the academy strikers come through, like Daniel Broadbent, and we had like Jimmy Spencer, all these guys that came on, just on the first 2 games, they go at it hell for leather. Of course they do. They're trying to create an impact, create a moment where they can be memorable and push themselves within that to be on the bench every week, right? And Matos, obviously, he's just come from Chelsea. He's never played first team football ever. He's played a couple of games for the in the EFL Trophy and whatnot. But you can just see he's really trying to impress, because there's no way you can keep that tempo up for 90 minutes for a 46-game season. He's unbelievable. But
yeah,
he's got to calm it down, because he'll get a reputation. You'll get a reputation, and then referees will pick up on it very early. First tackle will be fine. Second tackle will be booked, and you'll be 10 minutes into a game, and then it changes the entire outcome for him and how he has to play the rest of the game for Town.
Yeah, last week I thought he was the only player able to play at their pace, at Man City's pace, which I thought was a really good sign. But yeah, very interesting debut, home debut for Matos, and I think it's important to bear in mind as well he's not match fit either, because he's had to come off at 60 minutes, around the hour mark, hasn't he, in both games? So when he actually gets physically match fit, he's going to be a really interesting character, isn't he? Is Alex Matos. So I'm looking forward to seeing a lot more from him, and I've just got a little feeling that there might be a big game from him next week against Blackburn. I've just got that little feeling. I mean, the rest of the game, I'll be honest with you, I just didn't enjoy the game at all. I just found the entire game to be dull. Literally almost every minute. Town had 62% possession, which I don't think I even need to fact check this. I'm pretty sure it's going to be the highest that we've had in any game this season. I don't even need to look at it, do I? But it just felt we did very little with it. It was quite ponderous at times. Midfield was static, which made me wonder really if we should have maybe made a change in midfield. And that was my sort of main issue with the second half, was we just kind of kept at it in the same shape, with the same sort of personnel. And I thought maybe we should have taken Hoggy off at one point. I didn't think really it was a game which was for him. I felt like we needed perhaps to get Ben Wiles on and maybe push Ben Wiles further forward. Just change that dynamic, or maybe switch the system maybe to a 4. And have, either Karoma or Sorba coming from out wide, or something slightly different, because it wasn't really working with them both through the middle. But there was just nothing really from us, was there? And it just sort of petered out into nothingness. And I think there was a shot from Ben Jackson in the second half, which was relatively easily dealt with. But it just from 70 minutes or so, you just knew that we weren't going to win the game, or the game was pretty much done as a result, wasn't it? With 20 minutes left, and it was a little bit frustrating watching that, I guess.
Just no urgency, which I found surprising, Matt. Like, Plymouth are above us. For them, a point's much better than it is for us because we're chasing them down, right? We're at home. On paper, like you spoke about earlier, I don't think we could have had an easier game on paper. They've come in, they've not won away from home, they've lost half the team, they've lost the manager. We've got our owners here, and he's giving the fans a big lift, and you're thinking we're going to put a bit of a performance here. And looking at the game, it just looked like we didn't want to lose. It were a bit like, oh, we can't lose this game. We just can't lose it. And but it looks like Darren Moore's gone out. And again, this is me speculating, but it looks like he's the kind of team talks we had before the game's a bit like, right, let's just keep the ball. Let's keep the possession. We need to play on the ball a little bit, which is fine, but it's very one-dimensional. It's not really creating any attacking play. It's just we need to control the ball better. And like you say, what kind of proves that is that Hogg wasn't needed in that second half. They didn't really threaten us too much, but instead of taking that little bit of a gamble to chase the 3 points, and I'm a massive Ben Wiles fan. I don't understand the dislike he kind of gets from everybody. He does a lot of work off the ball because Hogg's slowing down as he gets older. Ben Wiles does an awful lot of it. And I think he drives us forward pretty well. Like, if he gets the ball in midfield, he takes 10, 15 yards, just goes if it's there and available to him. And when you're trying to unlock a team that aren't necessarily opening up too much against you because they're happy for a point away from home, they're the kind of players you need. And I thought that was quite a straightforward sub to go with at the weekend, but he didn't fancy it. He went with Iorpenda instead. I found it quite frustrating watching it, Matt, and that we've got, again, these 4 games where we need to get quite a lot of points out of them because the games coming afterwards are much more difficult. And unless we have a gluttony of players coming in between now and the end of January, really can change the tempo and style of this team. We aren't going to change that much between now and the end of the season. What we're seeing now is more or less what it's going to be. But urgency is something you can kind of push on the players. Just have a go. And like Kevin spoke about after the backwards and sideways passing, it just turns the fans against you. And we need everybody on the same kind of boat. But it didn't even felt like we had a go, did it? It just felt like we were happy to take a point and just not concede, really. And it's just a bit defeatist, especially when it's a game, like we said, on paper, where you're not going to get many better chances to get 3 points, but you're not going to get those chances if you don't have a go. And I think that's what really frustrated everybody at the weekend.
I mean, like you said, there wasn't much urgency. The most urgency was coming from Tom Lees, who was like trying to overlap from sort of right centre back, and there was nothing really coming from midfield, and that was the frustrating thing. And I know Hoggy's not a player that's going to drive with the ball forward. He's not Lewis O'Brien, so that was, for me, that was when you make that change, and it's no slight on him. It's just different, as the saying, boxing styles make fights, don't they? And it's just what we needed at that point was a little bit more forward momentum through the middle. And we did see Tom Iorpenda, and I was quite happy to see him. I didn't think it was a bad sub to make at all. I thought it was a game to throw him on, and he's big, isn't he? He's quite a tall lad for 18, quite filled out, and I thought he did quite well, if I'm honest. He didn't get phased. It was nice to see him, and in praise of Darren Moore, he's thrown him on in a key game and not worried about it. And there's a couple of times where I felt he was let down, wasn't he? Iorpenda with a couple of passes which were behind him, which he kind of slipped and fell, didn't he? Which made him probably look worse than it wasn't his fault at all. You know what I mean? They were just poor passes to him. But I thought when he got the ball, he did quite well, used it well, and he wasn't afraid to get stuck in as well. I thought it was a promising debut for someone who's 18. And you look on the pitch and you've got Brady Frost running on. You got Brodie Spencer, haven't you? Centre back who's 19 and doing well. You got Tom Iorpenda, 18, who's done quite well. Ben Jackson, I know he's a little bit older, left wing back who's done okay. And it's good to see. It's great to see academy players coming through, and we'll maybe talk about the academy changes in a little bit because of Kevin's interview. But I was pleased to see it, but I felt as well as Iorpenda, you could have put Wilds on as well and change and really change the dynamic in there, but it just wasn't to be. And to be honest, it was a dull game which petered out. And straight away after the game, before you could pick up your phone, Kevin Nagle's tweeting that it's not good enough in caps. How did you find that? Because I kind of walked away from the game. I could feel my phone going mad in my pocket, with people like messaging me, and I was just like, I can't be bothered. The game was rubbish, and I can't be bothered talking about it yet, kind of thing. And then I picked it up because my other half obsessed with home bargains, so she's like, I want to go around home bargains and look for something. So I had a look. It's like 45 messages on my phone. And I'm like, what's going on here? And everyone's like going, oh, Darren Moore's in for it, and stuff, and he's going to sack him, etc. And I think that kind of the tweet kind of set the expectation that wasn't good enough, and he was going to sack Darren Moore. And I just felt like the tweet probably wasn't that greatly advised. I mean, he can tweet what he wants, can't he? It's his account, he's passionate, and I like him, Kevin Nagle. He can tweet what, he doesn't need to listen to me. He can tweet what he wants. But that might be a song that he tweets what he wants, Kevin Nagle. But I just didn't think that maybe the context of that was probably quite helpful. I mean, he could have put not the best result today. We need to do better or something like that, and then that's different, isn't it? But when you put sort of like not good enough in caps, it kind of lets people's minds wander. I think that's where I'm going with that, and I think people kind of tried to put two and two together and thought Darren Moore wasn't leaving the building with a job, didn't they? I think that might have been some wishful thinking from some people. But I mean, he put that right, didn't he? Later with his video diary with Dave Carmichael, and I'll be honest, I've really enjoyed those video diaries from Kevin and David Carmichael. I think it's quite refreshing. It's quite nice to see it. They're both very likable guys, aren't they? When they're doing it, I like Dave's a giant, isn't he? But he's very likable. And they both are. Sat there in the hotel room talking about what they've done. I quite enjoyed it. I found it really, really good, really refreshing. And you won't get that with a lot of football clubs up and down the country. And I found that really sort of really nice. And he sort of rode back a little bit, didn't he? And sort of said afterwards, no, Darren Moore's staying. There's no change there. And so he corrected that quickly, which was good. But how have you found, or how did you find the immediate aftermath of the of social media
with Nagle and Dave Carmichael? What's his actual proper name? David something other, isn't it? It's not Carmichael. David's his real name.
Viglin or something?
That's it. It's like a Jolly Boys outing, isn't it? It's like when these two have come over from America and they're just seeing everything, seeing the sights,
smashing fish and chips, everything. I love it.
It feels real, doesn't it? And when they're speaking, they speak so well. And now they don't commit to very much when you actually break it down exactly what they've said. But I tell you what, half lift the fans, and there is a bit of Dean Hoylism in there where things were bad, he'd come out and speak, and it'd really lift everybody. And it does feel like that with Kevin Nagle. He's got that down to a T.
Do you know what? I honestly felt the crowd was slightly bigger against Plymouth because of the Nagle effect. Like there's a schools.
Yeah, there's a lot of people behind the FML. What was it?
Yeah, I think there was a schools promotion or a local football team promotion, something like that. And I just felt the crowd was a little swollen. I felt like it had a positive effect, and I felt that there was a bigger crowd against Plymouth in terms of people in the ground than what there was against Middlesbrough and Blackburn.
But he speaks well, and he answers every question put to him, and he never gets offended by the questions asked either. He comes across really, really well and likable. And I think that's very, very difficult, especially for an American coming into English football, because generally most fans have an instant dislike to an outsider coming in, especially when they come in initially and call it Huddersfield and soccer, and it's in between Leeds and somewhere else relevant, Manchester or whatever. But again, with the way he speaks, he's so frank yet pleasant. I think you can't help but feel some sort of affinity to him. But when I first saw that tweet, man, I had to check the username first up, because I thought Sandra were at it again, where she changed the photo to Kevin's photo, because I just thought, nah, there's no way he's done that, because surely you've learned from what happened after the Warnock, was it the Norwich game, where I think Nagle tweeted something
Norwich,
about it not being good enough, and that led to Warnock saying at the end of a chicken press conference about transfers not being done and didn't understand exactly how many players in we could have got, and that was it Ruffles and some Ward signing new contracts have changed things, and all these games started to be played on the back of a tweet, regardless of who was right and who was wrong. Irrelevant. There was a domino effect from a tweet, or we kind of think that's what partially played out a little bit. So I just didn't expect it. But being in the stadium is very different. And Nagle's watched a lot of games from abroad, and then you're hearing audible boos for the last not all 10 minutes of the last 10 minutes, but you can feel the frustration in the town stadium.
Yeah.
With a like you say, Hartrick and Chicken have spoke about this, I think, on the podcast last week in regards to they get frustrated when town fans have that groan when the ball goes backwards or sideways, because to dictate games you have to control possession, and sometimes you have to do it. I do agree with that, but then I also agree that on the weekend we did it far too much, and it was pointless passing. It was never going to get anywhere. And I think when the crowd's groaning like that and you're in the stadium, it changes how you feel about it. And now, obviously, I was away from here for a long, long time, and you kind of forget about it. And then you get back in and you hear that town fan groan, and it's hard to ignore. And I think the moment there kind of probably led maybe to how he felt and how he portrayed his opinions on his tweet straight after. Because like you said, later on, when he's in his Netflix-style live documentary, how do you feel about the game today, which I do love as well, Matt. I think it's fantastic. And it only, again, it engages fans more and more and more and buys him favour and more trust from us. He kind of backtracked a little bit, I thought he reeled himself back in to explain, maybe not backtrack, but he explained himself with more detail, which made it more palatable for both Darren Moore and us as fans. Because unfortunately for Darren Moore, I think he had to speak about Nagle's tweet before Nagle had done his video diary in his Leeds hotel room. Yeah. So fair play to Darren Moore, because that was a very dodgy little precipice to have to skirt around. But one thing I will say, if you're listening to the way Kevin Nagle speaks now compared to how he spoke just a few months ago about Darren Moore, because back then it was Darren Moore is the man, he's our guy, we're going to help him build. Now it's a bit more, he's the right guy for now, or right now I'm not going to do it. And that's a distinct and purposeful change of tone for me. And I might be off the mark here. I don't know what you think about it, but I definitely feel like we're referring to things as right now. I'm not saying he's going to be gone in the next few weeks. I'm not saying that, but it just feels like Nagle's learning about how we town fans kind of work and how much we scrutinize every single thing you say. So he's got to be a bit more careful. You can't never say never kind of things coming into it here, because I've seen a change in language on that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I mean, we'll go to the Radio Leeds interview, and the Radio Leeds interview that he did was great. Again with Oggy, I thought Oggy was good as well. Oggy asked good questions. I mean, he pushed I thought he was going to sack Darren Moore himself at one point. Oggy was really pushing that forward, wasn't he? And I thought it was a good interview. And they did push that, like I say, Oggy pushed the Darren Moore thing quite a lot, because there's a lot of pushback from supporters at the minute who are not enjoying themselves. They're not enjoying the football. They're not enjoying the results. They're not enjoying the lack of connection that you get with Darren Moore, because he's very evasive in his press conferences. And I've said this before, he's not here to entertain people in press conferences. He's here to win football matches, but unfortunately he's not winning football matches either. So, he's got 3 wins in 20 games, which is actually a worse record than Mark Fotheringham this time last year. Mark Fotheringham's got 3 more points in his first 20 games than Darren Moore. And I mean, Mark Fotheringham was a lot more embarrassing, wasn't he, in some of the ways he handled himself. But Darren Moore always handles himself with a lot of dignity, doesn't he? Like, in terms of the Kevin Nagle response as well. And I don't think there's any doubt that Darren Moore's a good bloke. He's just not an entertaining bloke for people. And I understand people's frustration with him, because they don't feel that, they don't feel the connection with him, and they don't feel like we're in good hands with him, because they just don't feel it. You know what I mean? And they don't see it on the pitch as well. So there's a lot of pushback coming against Darren Moore, and Kevin Nagle's response was very bullish, wasn't it? It was very much a case of, no, he's not going anywhere. Let's put this to bed now. Darren Moore's not going anywhere. He's not had the tools. He's had the injury list, etc., etc. And I think he's right. He has had a really bad injury list, and you can argue if you want whose fault that is, whether that's Darren Moore's fault for coming in and changing the the levels of training. I don't know. You can maybe make that judgment if you want. It might be right, might be wrong. And then you've got the lack of things like we've talked about, the lack of strikers. And I mean, I don't think he's had a game really this year where he could field two genuine out and out strikers in his preferred system, and he's had nobody to change anything from the bench. We've talked about week after week, Darren Moore's substitutes or whatever. People have talked about it, but we've kind of held off a bit because he's not really got anything to change anything with. So it's not like he can bring on Jordan Rhodes and you can bring on Danny Ward or you can bring on Sorba Thomas or something like that, or Delano Bergzorg to change again, because he doesn't have that option. So there's a lot of truth in what he said, but there's a lot of frustration as well with the way that things have panned out. And I don't think a lot of things in-game tactics of things have kind of passed him by, and it's a difficult situation, isn't it? Because on one hand, he's not had a fair crack of the whip, but he's almost on the other with supporters. He's almost past the point of no return as well, isn't he? Where people are that dead set against him, it's almost impossible to win them back, and it creates just such a nasty atmosphere. So he's in a position now whereby he's sort of said Darren Moore's going nowhere. But we've talked about the importance of the next few games. I mean, if we go to Blackburn and lose and then don't beat QPR, it's a situation whereby you've got Sheffield Wednesday at home coming up, and we could potentially be in and around that bottom three. And there's a decision then that would need to be made, isn't there? There's a more serious decision that would need to be made. And I was never one for Darren Moore's appointment. I always felt that he was the wrong man for the job, and I still feel that way. But I want him to succeed because I can't be bothered. It'll be 6 managers in 18 months or something stupid. You can't keep going around that crazy merry-go-round, can you? And nobody serious is gonna take the job on when the squad's inadequate and you sack him of the squad rather than the manager sometimes, and that's what it feels like. I mean, Neil Warnock did a great job, didn't he, at the end of last season? There's no doubt in that. And there are people that could do better, but there are probably people that could do worse as well. And it's such a roll of the dice, isn't it? And to be fair, he's not. We're talking games here, aren't we? Board games, and he's not had a full deck of cards to play with. And it's one of those, isn't it, where I'm kind of like, I didn't think he was right for the job. I still don't. But he's not had a fair crack of it to sort of say that, yeah, he came in, he was given the tools to do the job and he didn't do it. Because that's not the case. He's come in and he's not had the tools to do the job, and he's not done it. It's sort of, not that he's set up to fail, but the circumstances have dictated that he's failing at the job at the minute because of, the injuries, and we've got 2 new players in, one of them's playing, one of them's injured, and it's difficult to sort of sit here and say definitively that the manager should stay, the manager should go, because we don't really know if he's any good yet, because he's not had that fair go, has he?
No, I don't think he can do anything else with the team. We saw it sitting here saying we need to have more of the ball, we need to create more chances. But as soon as we open up, we concede. That's what's happened. Because again, my genuine opinion of it, Matt, is that the squad's not good enough. And I thought that was from the start of this season. It was pretty open. Pozza and I spoke about this quite a lot. In the squad going into the season was recklessly small for me, and it didn't have the talent we had at the end of last season. It maybe not individual talent, but once you've got a bit of depth, it gives you options. It allows you to change things in games. It allows you to keep other teams on their toes in regards to they're not entirely sure what system you're going to play when you turn up. We're very predictable at the moment because we don't have any players we can really rotate around. We're very simplified when it comes to the way we can play football because of the players we have available to us. And that isn't Darren Moore's fault for me. It really isn't. And I don't think anyone could do a much better job than Darren Moore could when it comes to playing. The problem I think Town fans have with him again is, like you say, Matt, the not taking Tom Edwards off against Leeds earlier on when we were really suffering, the changes against Ipswich, and then just little things like not waving after the game and stuff. These little tiny things that really upset fans when you're not winning games. And now I think he could have done better on those kind of aspects, and maybe won fans over a little bit more that way. But that just doesn't seem to be him. And I don't think it's anything nasty or anything personal against Town fans. It's just the way he coaches. But sometimes coaches don't fit fan bases. And if that's the case, you have to win games. And if you're not winning games or it's not exciting to watch, then these are the things that kind of get thrown around. But you're right, Matt, there's not really enough to judge him on because he's not really been given any sort of toolkit to build something. It's just kind of firefighting, isn't it? It's more, right, we just need to not lose this game. We just need to stay in contention. We need to just get to January. We're in January. And like you said, we've had more managers in 18 months than we've had strikers fit, I think. So you can't really blame Darren Moore for it when he's got to... I think Ben Wiles on the bench this week. Was he the only first teamer really that would class as a bona fide first teamer on there? And it's the first one we've had for ages. I don't think we've really had one.
Evans Green, I guess, but
he was a fringe player for it. He's always been kind of a fringe player, but because of the situation, he's been thrown in a little bit more and got more game time than maybe his form suggests. But that's what Darren Moore's having to deal with, and we are still above the relegation zone. I look at that as some sort of success, regardless of the comparisons to Fotheringham's performance with Town last year. But like's been mentioned before, Warnock's form at the beginning of the season wasn't great either. So it's hard to say he'd have done a much better job than what Darren Moore's done. Who knows? The only thing we do know is his squad at the moment's thin, and it has been thin since day one. And Darren Moore doesn't have much he can do with it to get a different kind of style and a different kind of result and performance that fans are going to like, really, in my opinion, anyway.
No, I think one thing is we all on the podcast, Cosy, we all predicted at the start of the season with Neil Warnock in charge that we'd only be around about this place anyway, come the end of the season. So I think that kind of indicates what we expected really with Neil Warnock in charge. I do think Neil Warnock would have done slightly better than what Darren Moore's done. I think for a start, I don't think he would have put Tom Edwards 1-on-1 against Somerville at Leeds. I think that was just unbelievably bad tactical management. But I mean, there's a lot of things. I think Neil Warnock just understood the squad more. I think Darren Moore's kind of thinking, right, I've got this system I want to play, and then players will have to fit into this system. Whereas Neil Warnock was more about he would manage the players he had a little bit better. That I mean, Danny Ward had probably played more. I think if for Neil Warnock could have been a bit more available, or it'd have had to be available. But I mean, I just don't think we'd have been a million miles. Like Neil Warnock mentioned the player, he knew what he was doing, didn't he? When he shithoused the next guy by saying this team should push on towards the playoffs. He knew what he was doing, didn't he? When he said that, when he left Neil Warnock,
it was brilliant in the moment. No one bought that. No fan surely bought.
He proper set. I mean, no one really should have. We did in our preseason predictions that some people did suggest that Huddersfield would be pushing up towards the playoffs, and I just felt like with what we had, it was just never ever going to happen because players plateau, don't they? They can play really well and above themselves for a short period of time, but they will plateau in the end. Which leads us on to another point that Kevin made on the Radio Leeds interview, was that he expects another 3 players to come in on top of what we've brought in so far. So we brought in Bojan Radul. I can't even say his name anymore. I said it perfectly earlier, didn't I? Radulovic earlier. So we brought him in. Hopefully he'll be back sooner rather than later. Matos looks, interesting. We still, for me, need at least 2-3 quality players that will make a difference. Midfield, wing, striker, maybe a centre back. We still need those players. Otherwise, if we don't get the points in this January month, we're going to be really struggling out. We come February, March with the run we've got, and it's that's the worry, isn't it? That we need to get these players in as sharply as possible. I know it's not always possible because of the domino effect of the January transfer window. I think anybody who, if it's not your first season in football or you've come fresh from Football Manager, it doesn't happen whereby you go, right, I want that one. It's like buying a house, isn't it? But 3 more players, mate. Another striker. We need a striker with championship experience, I think, who can find the back of the net. Because just in case Radulovic doesn't hit the ground running, so you need that backup option, don't you? You need somebody who can create from wide or through the middle. That passing. We still don't really have that passing midfielder. And then possibly a centre back because Yutta's out for five or 6 weeks, isn't he, with at the Asian Games, and you kind of miss that balance that he brings, unless Josh Ruffles is closer to returning than what we think. So there's a lot to do, isn't there? We're halfway through January. There's still a lot to do. There's more than 50% of work to do, mate. Are you hopeful for it? I mean, they made a good start, didn't they, with Matos and Radulovic? So
I think they made a great start, but there are players available. Like Scott Twine's moved today from he went back from Hull, I think, to Burnley, back to Bristol City on loan. You've got Kiefer Moore who's available. I'm not saying they're in our budget, but Luke Ayling, he's left Leeds on loan. There are players available if you're willing to go out and spend on them. And like you say, man, we need 3 or 4 first teamers, and we also need them fit, because if 4 of them come in and 1 or 2 get injured, we're out again. How's Bergzorg doing? Is there any expectation on when he's back? I know they're kind of suggesting, reading between the lines, a couple of months. Is that kind of the general belief on it? Is there a chance we send him back? Or because that would dictate our needs to me, because I think if he's going back, we need 2 strikers. I think you need 2 extra strikers from what we've got, because Danny Ward doesn't do it in this system, or he's not fit enough to play this system in the way that we need a striker to do it. We need somebody with pace, and we need an extra option with pace. So there's so many holes to fill. I'm not hopeful that we'll fill them all. No, I'm not. I don't know if we have the budget. Kevin spoke quite a lot about we've got a set budget that we're going to kind of stick to and stay around there. He's available to sign, obviously, those 3 players he wants, but then it's relative. What value are we putting on these 3 players? Is it $5,000 a week times 3? Are we looking at 50, or is it 3 players on at $15,000? Like, obviously, money doesn't always win football games, but it helps, especially in January when you need fixes now. We kind of look to be targeting footballers that are about 23, 24. You've got a lot less chance of them failing, I think, entirely when you spend money on that. That's kind of proven in Soccernomics and all the kind of studies they do there. But then in January, when you're going out to get those guys, they're kind of hard to find. There's a couple of guys in League One, isn't there, we've been linked with, who are out of contract in the summer. Is it Taylor Blackett?
Corey Taylor Blackett, from Charlton, who's 26. There was a 1.5 million fee mentioned, I think, online, and it's online, so it's probably not reputable by any stretch. But no one's going to pay 1.5 million for someone who's available for nothing in June. So especially if they've only ever played in League One. So it'd be interesting. Adds pace. Can come in and score goals from wide. It'd be an interesting player. Been linked with Devante Cole, haven't we, today? He's not a player I particularly like that much, is Devante Cole. I mean, if you're signing a 28-year-old Devante Cole who's never really done it at this level, why don't you just bring Jordan Rhodes back? It's just, I'm not sure there's much sense in that. But again, I always say to you, rule of 3: if 3 clubs are linked with a player, it's usually agent fed. Usually seems my rule of 3. But yeah, we're halfway through this month. We've got another big game coming up against Blackburn, who are in free fall at the moment. Blackburn are losing games quite heavily at the minute. It's such a massive game for us. I mean, a signing or 2 before that would give the team and the fans a massive lift, wouldn't it? Going into that game, because it's such a key game. Because we haven't beaten Plymouth, we now ideally need to beat. I felt we needed to get 2 wins and a draw from the 4 games.
That's where I'm at.
So we've got the draw, so we need another 2 wins, and I don't think we can afford to get beat by Sheffield Wednesday either, because that closes the gap from below. So really now I'm looking at 2 wins and a draw. If we don't lose to Sheffield Wednesday, or if we win the next 2, then we need, we could ideally win all 3. You need to win all 3, don't we?
I think as a minimum, Matt. I think if you come out, as a minimum, if you come out of this with 2 draws from the away games and then you beat Sheffield Wednesday, I know it's not ideal. But I think that's some sort of platform you can at least try and build from. But you lose any of those first 2 games, the pressure that Town will have against Sheffield Wednesday will be unbelievable for a game in January. But it might even be February. I don't actually know the date.
It's first game of Feb, isn't it? Yeah.
There you go. But it's going to be so much pressure on that game, and we're not a team built to play under pressure. We're just not as today we find ourselves anyway. So I think 5 points. I think you can scrape through with that. But again, there's not much room for error then, and you're asking a lot for the rest of the season.
I mean, you need another 15 points, wouldn't you, from now to the end of the season or something like that to get to mid to late 40s, wouldn't you? So what we are now? We're 26. So if you get 5 points, it takes you 31. Then you're looking at another 15, 16 points to stay up, aren't you? So,
and you have to remember QPR and Blackburn. I think the QPR and Blackburn are bottom and 23rd in the league form table when you look at the last 8 games. So you really can't have better games coming up for us to try and take good points from. It really is. These last 3 games have kind of fallen in our favour between Plymouth, Blackburn and QPR, but you just have to make the most of them. And like you say, we've whiffed against Plymouth because we didn't really try. And I don't think we can make that mistake again. And hopefully Kevin Nagle's tweet might make Darren Moore a little bit more forward-thinking when it comes to how we approach the next 2 games. But we really do have to get something out of these because you can't get teams in better positions to play against than what we're coming up against next.
No, I mean, he's in his video diary said he's going to go out for something to eat with the players and tell them to stop passing it sideways, didn't he, in his video diary, which was fun. I mean, some of the remaining points he talked about in the interview with Oggy, he mentioned the stadium. They're ongoing, aren't they, with the stadium? I mean, I kind of feel like they're flogging a dead horse when they talk about the gym and the pool a little bit. I mean, that was propped up by Cal putting in $500,000 a year, wasn't it, or something like that, and it lost $500,000 a year. So it's not going to get you much money. As admirable as it is, it's not much of a. It's going to lose money, isn't it? They mentioned a pub, didn't they? Like potential for pubs around the place and stuff, and they're looking into it, which would be really good. Whether that's the rope walk, whether it's redeveloping the driving range or gas club or whatever, I think that would be quite good to have a base for fans. And the state, I mean, HD1's never going to happen, is it, in this sort of climate at the minute? But there are things you can potentially do around there. And I do think that's where Kevin Nagle's eyeing, isn't he, around the stadium? And he's probably thinking there's certain things you can maybe do or bring in here and improve and, make the stadium quite nice. I think he mentioned that they've committed to improving bits of the stadium as well because it's starting to look tired and they need to change bits of the running, don't they? I think some bits and bats inside need changing. And they're on about changing some of the bathrooms. I mean, went to Man City, and do you know what blew my mind away at Man City, Killer? They have hot taps in the bathrooms. What's all that about? I can't remember going to a football stadium where they have hot taps. That's amazing. It was freezing outside. I just sat there under the warm taps, just washing my hands for about 5 minutes.
That's how bad football's been, in it, Matt. That's what we're looking at now. We're looking at having some hot taps.
Looking at taps.
Maybe that's what...
Faucets. That's what we're looking for.
Maybe that's what 40 million will get us when it comes to sorting out the stadium. Maybe is that what it is? Digital signage and some nice warm taps and go a treat from them for having to watch what's going on the pitch. But no, I'll win you, Matt. I thought the questions Oggy put to him were fantastic. I thought he asked every single thing I could think of asking. And he put it, apart from Kevin's answer to the if he saw the light show, I don't know if you caught that. Oggy asked him what he thought about the light show.
Yeah, didn't see it, did he?
He didn't see it, no, he didn't. But to be fair, I don't think anyone else did either, even though I was in the stadium. So maybe he did see it. But it's just nice to see, again, he answered the questions fairly. The stadium needs work doing to it. The council, the Giants, everyone kind of knows it. And I understand Kevin's point of view in that if you don't really want the club to put 100% of the money in, if you don't own 100% of the stadium, why would you? Yeah. Why would you do that? The risk is, like you said, the stadium has always run at a loss. I think it's an $800,000 loss about normally when it comes to how the stadium triple business, whatever it is, with a 40%, 20% split. Is it KDSL, KSDL? It normally runs at a loss. So if Town are taking that on, you've got to consider that you're getting something that's already making a loss, and you've got to make more money to cover that. Especially, like you say, when the gym's not there anymore, the swimming pool, and if they're not paying their rent, then you've got to consider how Town would fund the improvements necessary to extend the life of the stadium. That would then become something Town would have to cover, of course. And you have the owners, Nagle has to have a real strong belief in that, okay, we can take extra liabilities on extra risks because we're going to get more money elsewhere. They've got to really have a good business plan, or they expect to be able to make some profit elsewhere in the stadium that they feel they can't in the current situation. So I'm really interested with what the plans are, because to cover that kind of gap, it must be quite grand. And they haven't really gone into it in depth, other than we want it to put digital signage so we can help market things a little bit better. But it's interesting to hear him talk about it so openly, because quite often as owners, they don't really do that, do they? They keep things very close to the chest, and he seems very open with what his plans are for the club. And again, I just appreciate Oggy asking the questions.
Yeah, long way that continue. I think it's great to have that sort of open transparency and honesty with Kevin Nagle, and I've really enjoyed his visit so far. It's been fun, hasn't it? It's a shame that the football on the pitch hasn't really sort of matched the enthusiasm off it, but you can't fault it. It's been good. We just need, unfortunately, the way football is. Everything that he does off the field will just be rendered moot, won't it? If we continue to be poor on field, and unfortunately, that's just the way football is, isn't it?
He's learning that as well, though, Matt, because he kept referring to this.
Yeah.
He kept referring to it yesterday in his diary on the Radio Leeds broadcast. In that he kept saying it doesn't matter what plans we have if the stuff on the field's not very good. And again, when he first came over, I met him a couple of times down at the ATT meeting and with the HCSA, and he was not quite there at that point. He spoke a lot about off the field stuff and didn't really, apart from wanting to win, didn't speak about how we played on the field, and that has definitely changed. And that's another thing I'm positive about, in that as long as somebody can adapt and learn, and that's obviously what makes a good businessman, and that's no doubt why he's so successful in everything else that he seems to do. And it's just nice to see that shift, because it is very visible if you have a little bit of a look into it and see how his tone has changed, because now he's referring to all the time how it goes on the field, because you're right, Matt. If it's not very good on the field, the rest of it doesn't really matter.
That's unfortunately the way it is, and he can't really affect that other than buying players. So unfortunately, it might be costly for you, Kevin. But we wish you the best of luck. The other things he mentioned Canal Side, that they would potentially invest further in Canal Side because the rent's quite cheap, didn't they? I think that's something they mentioned. And the academy changes. So the academy currently is category 4 at the minute, the lowest possible. They've mentioned he did say it would go upper level, which indicates category 3, and then look to go upper level again, which would be category 2, which would put the club back to where it was. Category 1 academy at Huddersfield would be a huge change from where it's been in the past if they did tend to go that way. And I think it's something like you need to invest $2.5 million a year or something in it as well. You do get a lot of money through grants, so it's not all self-funded. So you get more money through grants, but it is a lot of money, and especially in the shadows of Manchester clubs, it's probably quite a difficult thing to achieve. Other than that, mate, I think that was pretty much all that you had time for, which was great. So we do appreciate that. Anything else that you can think of before we call it a day?
No, I don't want to cover any more of the football. I think, like I say, we've been over that many times recently. The pitch, everything on the pitch seems very, very similar week in and week out. At least we've had quite a bit from Kevin Nagle this week on behind the scenes to discuss.
Yeah, it's difficult, isn't it? Especially when you try and sort of sit and be kind of analytical in a lot of ways and try and go through it. It's very easy, isn't it, to sort of get swept up it would be very easy to get swept up in the Darren Moore out brigade, you know what I mean? Especially when we're skeptics as it is. But I think when you sit and look at it and look at the hand he's been dealt with, it's just difficult to kind of nail your colours to the mast either way at the minute, isn't it? But it is frustrating, and I do get the frustrations from everyone at the minute, town fans, and it's not a fun place to watch your football, is it, at the minute? But hopefully, starting at Blackburn, things will get a bit better. We'll get some more players in, and we can start to push on. That's the big hope, isn't it, moving forward? So I think that's it for this week. We should be back next week. And thanks for listening as always. Thank you to Magic Rock for sponsoring us. And let's have a little bit of Chris Carter to sing us out.
There's a team that is dear to its followers. The colours are bright blue and white. They're a team of renown, and they're the pride of the town. and the game of football is their delight. And all the while upon the field of play, thousands loudly cheer them on the way. Often you can hear them say, who can beat the town today? And then the bells will ring so merrily, and every goal shall be a memory. So town, play up and bring that cup back to Huddersfield. So town, play up and bring the cup back to Huddersfield.